Today, we're going to continue our journey towards building a declarative agent. And today, we're going to really be diving quite deep into declarative agents and what it means to build them to make a little bit more than just retrieving data. And I really think that's kind of one of the key area that we want to focus on when we're thinking about pro code tooling for declarative agents. We're going to talk about API plugins. So we're going to add actions using API plugins. And we're going to also talk about something we launched very recently, which is MCP plugins. After that, which is awesome, I'm going to hand that over to Rabia for her demo, where she's going to go way deeper into the MCP world and kind of showcase what we can do even on top of just retrieving data and acting on data. I think we can do really, really cool things. I'm going to let that to Rabia. So far, we've been answering questions. We've been citing documents. It was quite read-only, right? But today, we're going to call live APIs for real-time data. We're really going to go and call an API that lives out there, fully authenticated, and we're going to get that straight back to your environment. We're going to be able to create, update, and delete records. So we're going to be able to realistically create all the scenarios we need, the read and the writes, to connect to your systems. Now, what it means, we're going to talk about two different ways of adding actions to a declarative agent. The first way is through OpenAPI. If you have an API, a service that it has an OpenAPI description, or that you can describe using an OpenAPI description, just bring it. And we will be able to make use of that OpenAPI to understand and match the intent of the user based on what they're doing. So if you say, list me all the repairs, we will be able to identify that there is a read operation, a get operation somewhere in that API, and that we can perform it. If you say delete a record, we're going to be able to do the same thing. We're going to be able to identify that there's a delete operation on a record and has some required parameters that needs to be passed in, and we're going to automatically match the context with the parameters. And if we don't have enough information, we're going to ask you about them, and then we're going to be able to pursue that operation. That would be really, really powerful. It's awesome when you have an existing API. So I know there's a lot of people that have been looking into MCPs as the way to connect AI, but if you already have an API plugins are perfect for you. They allow you to use your existing investments and to reuse them directly inside Copilot. And you can do some rich rendering using adaptive cards. So you can actually either point to a file or just embed it into the description that I'm going to show in a minute. The second way is through MCP plugin. So MCP plugin is working in a similar way to OpenAPI descriptions, just that instead of the OpenAPI description, you're bringing your tools descriptions. So each MCP server has a list of tools. Bring that list of tools inside your declarative agent, and now we're going to be able to reason over that list of tools and understand when to call which. I would suggest that if you have an MCP server, to use that MCP server. It might be a little bit easier to use. It's also fairly interesting when you want to do rich rendering. Well, we won't talk about rich rendering today, or I won't talk about rich rendering today. I'm going to leave that to Rabia later on. And then adaptive cards is also fully supported with MCP servers that don't necessarily have support for rich rendering in your MCP server. And both of them are just manifests. So in this case, I'm going to connect to existing APIs that are currently running out in the wild and that doesn't need any local setting on my machine. So I can just describe the API, describe the operation, and then just use it directly into my declarative agent. So let's talk a bit about API plugins. You're going to need three things: your OpenAPI spec. You're going to need to be able to craft your own plugin manifest or use the tooling that we offer for that. And you're going to have to craft your own adaptive cards. Super important, the agent will understand what it can do by using function descriptions, but also parameter descriptions on how to match the parameters based on the intent of the user. So in the end, you're going to get a couple of different files. You're going to get, for example, a repairs plugin.json file. It's going to identify what this plugin can do, what are the different functions it has access to. It's going to point to the Open API to really have the richness of all the information you need. And afterwards, you're going to have a couple of adaptive cards as JSON files to render in a rich way over there. So instead of going through the slides, let me go and show you what this looks like in real life. Let me go here. Let me close these two things. Let me open up my app package, where we're going to go back to our declarative agent file that we had for a long time. We've been building this declarative agent file pretty much for the last couple of weeks, where we still have all of our capabilities, where we had graphic card, code interpreter, web search, and so on. But we're going to introduce a new node to that declarative agent. And that new node is this one here, the actions node. And the actions node here has two different ones, and we're going to start with the repairs. The repairs is our API plugin, where it basically references that repairs plugin.json. So let's go and see what that file actually has to offer. It's a pretty simple file, nothing too complex here. It only has a name and a description. So those are all the functions that are available inside your Open API file. So in this case, I understand that I can do repairs get, repairs item delete, item get, item patch, and I can create a new repair. All of that is identified through this here. So it's the runtime that we have right here that is of type Open API, where I do have a URL to my Open API file, and that's really where a majority of the real rich information lays. And also, I want to be able to run this plugin for all of these different functions. So maybe your Open API has way more functions and you want to limit it. Well, you can do it through here. So it would not allow anything else than these 5 functions here. So now let's go and check this API file. The first has some Open API regular information like the title, a description, a server, which is where this API lives right now, which is on the repairs hub.azurewebsites.net. And then you have all the operations, all the paths that are here. For example, as part of this path, I have a delete operation that has an operation ID. Look here, this is what matches the name of my function in my repairs plugin right here. So here you remember we have repairs item delete. Well, we have it here again, repairs item delete. And this is something that if you're using some framework, you can automatically generate your own Open API file. Coding agents are actually really good at identifying the docs, mapping it to an Open API file, and generating it if you don't have one already. So take advantage of that. And then here we have all our different operations, our delete, our get, our patch. We also have then a get on all the repairs, and we're going to get then a post on all the repairs to create into the collection. That's it. The rest is just very simple Open API description that is there. That was generated by the server, but as I said, you can generate your own if you don't have already one that matches the signature of all these APIs. And then it's just in the declarative agent, it's just hooked up as an action. And automatically, you will also have Copilot that will know about these actions and will be able to invoke them. So if I go here and I go to my, let me go to the right one. Let me go here, HR onboard. I did some changes or onboarding buddy. I might have a couple of those, right? HR onboarding buddy. I'm gonna. Yeah, it's good. It's the one that I haven't installed just yet. And we have it here. Now I'm going to be able to use the get all repairs right here, and I'm going to call it. Now, might have some issues on my tenant today. We'll see how that works, how that plays out. I'm using a very early tenant, so it might actually not work, but believe me here, that would work. It's going to work for my MCP stuff. So it's going to be the exact same experience for both. What is really important, and I just saw in the chat, yeah, exactly. So it didn't work exactly right now. I'll come back to do a demo on that working later on, but you see that as part of my debugging card. We're going to cover the debugging card later in the session, but that I do have my repairs API right here, and it should automatically select the right function from here automatically. Now, I had a question around auth. How do I make sure that these are authenticated? This one was not authenticated, and you could see it from my repairs plugin. I say authentication type none. Well, in this case, it's okay. I'm just doing some dev work. If you want it to be authenticated, we do support either API key, OAuth, or SSO. And all of those are automatically supported. You need to register your authentication into our developer portal, and then automatically everything works end to end. The user will be prompted. The user will be logging into your underlying system, and then we will take care of the token, making sure that it's all refreshed when we need it to do all the calls from the orchestrator side. So that is the first demo that I wanted to share with all of you. Now, let's go back to slides for a second, and let's talk about how we do that also with MCP plugins. Well, you can think about it as being the exact same thing. The same plugin file we saw earlier, it's basically the exact same file we're going to use for plugins with some little differences, but kind of almost the same thing. The server self-describes itself. We're going to have very soon live tool discovery at runtime. Right now, you need to bring it to your manifest, but the goal is to get to automatic discovery or dynamic discovery of these tools to make sure that your agent can evolve as your MCP server evolves. And you can also have either adaptive cards to be inlined, or you can use some UI widgets in the past and in the future. And Rabia will cover that in the next session. So this is basically how it looks. You see how it's very familiar. The same plugin manifest, the same things with the name and the description. Here, the name would be your MCP tool name. Here will be the description. And now you're going to have the type, which will be remote MCP server, the URL to your MCP server, and then the tools that are embedded directly in there. And that's it. You can also externalize the tool. You can use a file to represent the tool. So it might be a little bit easier to keep them in sync. And then as part of the tools description, that's the information we need. We need the name, the title, the description, the input schema, what comes in, what are the parameters, what comes out, the output schema, and all of that should be working as one big thing together. So let me just go here, do a quick refresh to this. I can skip that and then just go into the demo here. Let me go to this tenant right now. Let me go back here. Let me show you quickly this one right there. I can do this. And now let me do the following. So now I will be looking, I was using the exact same type of query we've been using in the past. And in this case, like my tenant doesn't know about the PTO balance for which one is best, how to get this, how to understand the PTO balance. It's all secured. It's somewhere in a backend system, right? So I'm just gonna launch this here, and we're gonna see things lining up pretty quickly. I'm gonna also try the same on this guy here. Just want to check if that will actually work at the same time. Reason why I'm doing this dance between the two browsers is, okay, there we go. I wanted to get that. Perfect. And now it's going to tell me, hey, you know what? I will be connecting to an external system. The same experience would have worked earlier with the API plugins. And I'm going to just say here, just click confirm. So you're good with me sending that information to the downstream service. I'm going to hit confirm. And now It's going to call the MCP server that is running right now. It's going to get the data. It's going to securely do all of that. And now I'm going to focus on the bottom part of the screen here. And here you're going to see that the current PDO balance for Alex is 20 days with use of 8 days, has 2 pending days. And you can see that all of that was coming from that. You see how that pill, that citation pill, it tells you that this is coming from Contoso HR, which is automatically the one that is our MCP server. Now, at the top, you might have seen some rich content right here, but I'm going to get Rabia to talk to you about how to build those and how to make them even better than that. So in one thing, what is interesting also is you can actually mix them. If you have APIs and MCPs, they can live together. They can be hooked up to the same agent and work in different ways, which is really, really powerful, I think. When to use which? Well, if you already have an open API file, just use an API plugin. If you want to render like an experience within Copilot, definitely go with an MCP plugin. If you want to go the simplest setup, API plugin is probably what you're looking for because you probably already have those APIs in your organization. If you're building from scratch, I would recommend to go the MCP route. If you want to have cross-platform tool compatibility, now all the AI tools are all kind of going through the MCP standard. So I would definitely highlight to go to the MCP plugin route. So you're going to be able to reuse that server across other scenarios. Now we have persona, capabilities, knowledge, accents, all within just a JSON file, a set of JSON files. So we've been able to take that scenario early on to here today where we're having all of these really cool things. So I think it's great. Next session, we're going to talk about advanced configuration, where we're going to be fine-tuning our agent, handling some edge cases, and making sure that the agent is production ready. So we're going to talk about that next week. Until then, you can try the current code that is on that repo.